Afternoon, and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and across the world at wadr.org. This is Newslink. Coming up in the news, Guinea-Bissau Human Rights League condemns military coup and interruption of the country's electoral process.
This is unacceptable. We strongly condemn this behavior by the military and demand the immediate release of all those detained.
ECOWAS Commissioner Abdul Fattah Musa charges citizens to lead the defense of democracy.
If you look at where we have been successful in preventing electoral fraud, in preventing unconstitutional maintenance of power, it is where the citizens are vigilant.
Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko addresses Parliament amid opposition boycott, and President Bola Tinubu approves a committee for the Nigeria-US working group to address rising insecurity. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
For joining our broadcast. Senegalese Prime Minister today appeared before the National Assembly for a face-to-face session with members of Parliament. Ousmane Sonko's presence at the Parliament came at a particular time marked with tense political climate, according to several analysts and observers. Beyond the boycott by opposition MPs and non-aligned parliamentarians, analysts also highlight a breach of the parliamentary timetable. Mandama Ramatoja, a Senegalese political analyst, underscored the significance of Sonko's parliamentary visit.
The last session was held on the 14th of April 2025. It has now been nearly 7 months without another one, which means the Republican calendar has not been respected. What caused this gap? For now, there has been no communication. And beyond that, what explains scheduling this session on the eve of a major budget marathon? People are questioning whether Ousmane Sonko deliberately chose this moment as a platform to communicate, given that he is engaged in a battle for public opinion.
Madame Ramata Jah, a Senegalese political analyst, will bring you highlights of Ousmane Sonko's face-to-face session with Parliament today, who has so far called for the release of Domingos Simes Pereira, Bissau Guinean opposition politician in detention since Wednesday coup in the country. Meanwhile, Bissau Guinean deposed head of state Umar Sissoko Embalo is currently in Dakar. Embalo arrived in Senegal late Thursday after an emergency virtual meeting convened by the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State. During these discussions, chaired by ECOWAS Chair and Sierra Leone President Julius Marabio, several measures were agreed upon and adopted. Among them, the setting up of a mediation committee to engage the coup leaders in Bissau, the outcome of which resulted in the release of Umar Sissoko Embalo. The regional bloc also set up a delegation to be headed by Foyan Singbe, president of Togo's National Council, to ensure a swift return to constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau. As Francis Boniface reports, Bissau's membership of the regional bloc has been suspended.
A statement from the Senegalese government on Thursday evening announced the arrival of our state president Umaru Sissoko Embalo in Dakar. The state president's departure was made possible through an extraordinary ECOWAS summit of heads of state held virtually. The leaders firmly condemned the seizure of power by force. They also called for the restoration of constitutional order and the immediate release of all detainees. ECOWAS also set up a mediation committee composed of Senegal, Cape Verde, and Togo, which will soon travel to Bissau to monitor the implementation of these measures. The Senegalese government statement specifies that since the beginning of the crisis, Senegalese authorities have been in direct communication with all relevant Bissau-Guinean actors. ECOWAS has suspended Guinea-Bissau from the bloc. On his part, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, calls for respect of the constitutional order. The African Union and European Union have issued the same message. Umaru Sissoko Embalo's main rival in the election, Fernando Diaz da Costa, claims he won the election and urges the military to recognize this. Meanwhile, a new chief of staff of the army was appointed yesterday in the person of General Thomas Jassy. The curfew imposed on Wednesday has been lifted and economic activities are resuming in Bissau.
Francis Boniface reporting there. More on Guinea-Bissau. The Human Rights League has condemned the military coup, expressing deep concern over the interruption of the country's electoral process. The organization is urging the military to respect the will of the people and allow the electoral process to proceed to its conclusion. Let's listen to Boubacar Touré, president of the Guinea-Bissau Human Rights League.
Nous, en tant qu'organisation de la société civile avec la mission de protection des droits humains,
as a civil society organization mandated to protect human rights, we have been following the situation with deep concern. The military has claimed to have overthrown the President of the Republic and all state institutions.
Nous, en tant qu'organisation de la société civile avec la mission de protection des droits humains,
as a civil society organization mandated to protect human rights, we have been following the situation with deep concern. The military has claimed to have overthrown the President of the Republic and all state institutions and has suspended the presidential electoral process. We are worried because we believe this military intervention has only one objective: to block the publication of the election results. In democracy, the will of the people must be respected by all. We cannot accept a situation where the military dictates the rules, especially when it amounts to seizing the people's will. We are also extremely concerned about those currently being held, individuals in arbitrary detention, leaders of political parties and other political figures. We have received information that, for example, 5 magistrates from the Public Prosecutor's Office have been arrested. This is unacceptable. We strongly condemn this behavior by the military and demand the immediate release of all those detained.
La libération immédiate de tous ces éléments-là.
Boubacar Touré, president of the Guinea-Bissau Human Rights League. ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdul Fattah Musa, is urging citizens across West Africa to take a frontline role in safeguarding democratic governance. He says ECOWAS can only act decisively against electoral fraud and unconstitutional attempts to retain power when citizens themselves are vigilant and demand accountability. He also warns that accountability among African leaders has broken down, calling for a new generation of bold, principled champions willing to speak truth to their colleagues when democratic norms are threatened.
Okay, listen, one of the ECOWAS mandates is that of prevention. And prevention has to be carried out through citizens themselves. Okay, if you look at where we have been successful in preventing electoral fraud, in preventing unconstitutional maintenance of power, it is where the citizens are vigilant. Where the citizens are not, ECOWAS is going to be very, very difficult for ECOWAS to intervene. The regimes will tell you, who tells you there's a problem here? But where citizens are active, and then they make sure that they hold their governments accountable, then organizations like ECOWAS, African Union, can then attach their interventions to them, telling the government, look, your own populations are rising up against you and we need to change this. But it begins with building the awareness of citizens to make sure that they are the first respondents when it comes to protecting democratic values in their countries. That is very important. There is also important to have peer review among our heads of state.
Is that happening? Because that's a concern that it's not happening.
It's not happening, so we need champions. And I think younger and more proactive leaders are emerging in Africa today. We need champions among them who can speak truth to their peers.
ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdul Fattah Musa.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're streaming live at wadr.org and on Facebook and YouTube at WADR English. In Côte d'Ivoire, opposition lawmaker and PDCI spokesperson Bredum Soumaïla Traoré is in police custody after responding to a summons at the Abidjan police headquarters. Authorities have leveled several charges against him, including incitement to insurrection and conspiracy against state authority. The PDCI has condemned his arrest as targeted political persecution and is demanding his immediate release. Nadir Tete has more.
Barely back in the country after spending several months abroad, Bredumi Sumaila Traore was arrested. He is being processed on 11 charges, including acts of terrorism, incitement to insurrection, hatred and xenophobia, arson of public and private property, and conspiracy against state authority. According to his lawyers, the MP has been placed under a detention warrant and transferred to the Abidjan Detention and Correctional Facility, known as the Abidjan Penitentiary Hub, PPA. The prosecutor's office cites a case of flagrant delicto, the only circumstances that allows the arrest of a sitting MP without first lifting parliamentary immunity. The PDCI has denounced what it calls relentless targeting of its officials and questioned why the Abidjan prosecutor would initiate such a procedure while the National Assembly is in the middle of a budget session, a period during which parliamentary immunity is particularly protected. In a statement issued on Thursday, the party led by Sheikh Tijani Thiam reaffirmed that this arrest was carried out in blatant violation of the rules governing the protection of MPs. According to the party, these actions represent, quote, a strategy of intimidation and harassment aimed at silencing dissenting voices, particularly those of democratic opposition. The PDCI is also calling on international organizations such as ECOWAS, the African Union, and the United Nations to urgently take up the matter in order to prevent what it says is the creation of a dangerous precedent.
A report by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Aristomble and voiced by Nadir Tete. Nigeria and the United States are moving to tighten security cooperation as Abuja battles persistent threats ranging from armed groups in the northwest to extremist activity in the Lake Chad Basin. President Bola Tinubu has approved the Nigerian delegation to a new joint working group with Washington aimed at strengthening coordination on security, diplomacy and humanitarian response. From Abuja, Usman Umar reports.
The Nigerian government says the joint working group emerged from recent high-level engagement in Washington, led by the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. Ribadu will chair the Nigerian side, supported by a team drawn from strategic ministries and security institutions. Among them are the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Defense, Interior and Humanitarian Affairs, as well as the Chief of Defense Staff, the Inspector General of Police, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency. Two senior officials, Idayat Hassan of the Office of the National Security Advisor and Paul Alabi of Nigerian Embassy in Washington, will coordinate the secretariat. According to the presidency, President Tinubu has tasked the group to work closely with American counterparts to ensure seamless implementation of agreements reached across multiple sectors including counter-terrorism, intelligence sharing, humanitarian assistance and governance reforms. The move comes amid renewed international scrutiny of Nigeria's security landscape. In recent years, global attention has intensified from allegations of targeted killings to debate over religious freedoms, with U.S. lawmakers repeatedly raising concerns about violence affecting communities across the country. Just last week, a U.S. House Committee on Africa reviewed Nigeria's designation under the Country of Particular Concern category, hearing sharply divided testimonies on the drivers of insecurity and the government's response. For the Tinubu administration, however, the message remains clear. Protecting citizens is a top priority, and Nigeria, it insists, is committed to safeguarding tolerance and safeguarding all religious communities. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Still in Nigeria, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, said over 11,500 police personnel have been recalled following the presidential directive to withdraw police officers from VIP protection. Egbetokun, who disclosed this during the Strategic Officers Conference on Thursday, also said that the redeployment of affected personnel to underserved communities had since commenced. The Nigerian police chief explained that the recent directive by President Bola Tinubu was a strategic and deliberate realignment of its national policing priorities. According to Egbetokun, the policy decision is rooted not in sentiment but in necessity, reflecting the current security demands of Nigeria. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Guinea-Bissau Human Rights League condemns military coup and interruption of the country's electoral process. ECOWAS Commissioner for Peace and Security Abdel Fattah Musa charges citizens to lead the defense of democracy. Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko addresses Parliament amid opposition boycott, and President Tinubu approves a committee for the Nigeria-US working group to address rising insecurity. So that in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us. Shifting attention now to the Sahel region, precisely in Burkina Faso, the request for the provisional release of Guy Harvey Kam has been rejected. The lawyer and political figure is being prosecuted for conspiracy against state security. The Court of Cassation delivered its ruling on Thursday. Sankule Janko tells us more.
The hearing on Thursday, November 27, took place without the presence of the accused, Guy Harvey Kam. The Court of Cassation issued its decision while a collective of about 20 lawyers awaited the outcome. The court ultimately rejected the request for the release of the lawyer, a civil society actor and politician who has been held under a detention warrant since August 2024 for conspiracy against the security of the state and criminal association. He has since been detained at the military detention and correctional facility. The leader of the Sense movement has consistently denounced through his lawyers what he describes as an abusive arrest and illegal detention, calling for the annulment of the indictment orders. President of the Court of Cassation deemed the arguments admissible in form but rejected them on substance. The reasons for the decision have not yet been officially disclosed. They will be communicated to his lawyers in the coming days. The lawyers had earlier issued a statement on October 9 denouncing what they called intolerable denial of justice and demanding the release of Guy Harvey Kam, who was abducted in January 2024, released a few hours later and then rearrested in connection with the alleged attempted coup plot.
Sankule Janko with that report filed in by WADR's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba. And just before the guest segment, let's take you to the Gambia, where farmers say they are under growing financial pressure after the government kept the official groundnut price unchanged for the third year in a row. The price remains at about $118 per ton, a level farmers argue has not kept pace with rising production costs. From Banjul, Sandona Mendy reports.
Groundnuts remain the Gambia's biggest cash crop, sustaining tens of thousands of rural households across the North Bank, Central River, and Upper River regions. But many farmers say the economies of growing the crop are becoming increasingly difficult. Baisin, a farmer from Jokadu in the North Bank region, says the fixed farm gate price is undermining livelihoods.
The fixed groundnut price simply does not match with the rising cost of production. Everything from seed, fertilizer, and labor has become more expensive, yet the price farmers receive has stayed the same. This gap is pushing many families into financial hardship.
He, however, calls on the government for urgent intervention.
The government needs to implement a fair and flexible pricing system that reflects the real cost of production and current market conditions. Farmers also need access to available inputs and credit.
Farmers argue that the cost of fertilizer, transport, and labor has risen sharply in recent years, driven by global supply disruptions and persistent domestic inflation. Lamin Diba is an economist.
But one policy initiative that the government could take could be to set price floor, a minimum price, whereby no farmer in this country will be forced to sell a ton of groundnut below that minimum price.
The concern comes as the state-run National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation announced it has secured $2 billion, which is equivalent to $27.2 million to purchase groundnuts this season, an attempt to guarantee farmers a reliable buyer. Meanwhile, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics reports that annual inflation has remained in the double digits for the past 2 years, further increasing the cost of essential farming inputs. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy reporting from Banjul.
Politics.
Our guest.
Politics. Analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Dr. Audu Liberty Hussaini, a Nigerian security consultant. He joins us for reactions on two major security directives issued by President Bola Tinubu amid the rising insecurity across the country. This week, the president ordered the recall of all police VIP protection officers, totaling over 11,500. Second measure was announced on Thursday. The team, comprising senior state officials chaired by the National Security Advisor, was approved as part of the Nigeria-US Working Group to address the plethora of security challenges the country faces. But for Dr. Audu Liberty Hussaini, more than the directives, there is a need for a political will.
Thank you for having me. But the truth of the matter, therefore, is that I just see that as a waste of time. I see that as a waste of time because there are issues that need to be addressed. One is that the first thing that we need to see the state do is to show commitment and show political will to end insecurity. And these are the ways they should do it. I expect that they will do it. One is that it is not the bandits or the Boko Haram members. It is not the foot soldiers that need to be dealt with or need to be addressed. We are talking in terms of the sponsors. Nigerian state really needs to go after the sponsors of insurgency and insecurity in this country, put them to trial and send them to jail if convicted. Again, Nigeria is one of the countries that bandits, kidnappers, and Boko Haram members make phone calls with their cell phone and demand ransom with their cell phones. However, this country, we have NIN, that we were told that by the time you register your phone, you can make calls without being tracked. These bandits also make phone, also upload videos online. So the question you ask yourself is, the Nigerian state actually knows where these bandits are. The Nigerian state actually do not want to step on toes because of conflict entrepreneur in the form of political capital or economic capital. It is when we discern the criminals that we begin to talk of de-radicalization.
Do you think these are some of the issues that will come up during talks by U.S. and the Nigerian delegation under the new cooperation strategy to end all forms of insecurity in Nigeria? Do you think these are some of the issues or areas of concentration that will be discussed?
Well, I don't know what we are going to be discussing because I'm not there, but it's important to say that the approach to Nigerian states to insecurity outside denial, efforts to deny the killing. So as a matter of fact, what the Nigerian government is even interested in doing is to do diplomacy, to find a way to present Nigeria as a country that does not have serious killing or serious crime or serious insecurity issues. So I do not expect that the Nigerian government will go to US because you first of all have to own up to the fact that you have a problem. It is when you own up to the fact that you have a problem that you'll be able to address it. And that's why I say every intervention must have to achieve three things. One is that the Nigerian people, the Nigerian government, those who speak on government and government officials, they need to understand what the issues are. They really need to have a clear understanding of what the issues are. Two is that they need to understand they are part and parcel of the solution. And three, they need to take action. The political elite needs to be dealt with. The president needs to understand that those who compromise security in this country because of conflict entrepreneur should be dealt with. I am sorry to say, let me ask you, let's assume that we have gotten insecurity, we have gotten some relative level of stability. To begin to address the issues, the political elite needs to be dealt with. The president needs to understand that those who compromise security in this country because of conflict entrepreneurs should be dealt with. I am sorry to say, let me ask you.
Dr. Audu Liberty Husseini is a security consultant in Nigeria. In the world of sports, Cape Verde lead up the opening window of the FIBA Basketball World Cup African qualifiers, storming back from a double-digit deficit to edge Cameroon 82-77 in the thrilling opener. The Islanders tightened up defensively, knocked down big shots in the fourth quarter and sealed the statement comeback win at the line. Cameroon will now look to regroup ahead of Game 2. Elsewhere, Nigeria D Tigers fell 88-78 to Tunisia in overtime. After matching the North Africans through regulation, Nigeria lost momentum in the extra period, leaving them with work to do in the qualifiers. And in football, Super Eagles captain William Troost Ekong has announced his retirement from international duty following Nigeria's World Cup playoff exit. The AFCON 2023 Most Valuable Player steps away after a decade of service but will travel with the squad to next year's AFCON in a non-playing role. Rising star Benjamin Frederick is expected to fill the void as Nigeria's new defense pillar. And that's it for sports. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English, and stream live at wadr.org. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.
WADR